Yeah, we'll just. Yep, great stuff. Right, welcome everyone. First ReserachBites session of the year, formerly APG. We've moved it to this slot. Hopefully, we get a bit more bums on seats. Kieran's got to shoot off soon, so I'll shut up talking and let him crack on.
Cool. Thanks Russ for the opportunity to come and sit and I guess inform you about some of the stuff that I've been doing towards the end of last year. And I started with, I do like the name ReserachBites, but it's like, does research actually bite? I think it's pretty cool. Research bites or does it? Anyway, hopefully it's looking good. Yeah. So I guess the areas that I've started to look into was part of my advanced vocational elective. And I had two specific areas of interest for some of my personal development and understanding in key areas. And one of which actually came about more of chance than anything, but work in the environmental chamber that we have and looking at heat acclimation for World IronMan Championship athletes. So a New Zealander who qualified through the New Zealand ranks and was going over for her particular age group. The other one though was a movement analysis study using GPS, and I've picked up in the sport of ultimate Frisbee recently, and my wife has as well. And I guess learning a little bit more around GPS, the tracking, but also trying to get some really good findings as well that will benefit the sport, but also see how that crosses over into other areas as well. You guys see that? So I'll start with the heat acclimation one. So for myself, I've been involved with triathlons. I did a half Ironman myself at one point and really enjoyed that whole test of your own strength and ability. And there was always this, awe of people who were going across to Kona in Hawaii to compete at the World Ironman Championship. So once a year, they'll go across and compete. And it all started way back in 1978. And it was one of those ones where a bunch of people sitting around bragging about who was the best athlete, the best endurance athlete. And at the time, there were 3 endurance events that were held in Hawaii. And one was the Ironman, another one was a bike ride, and the other one was an ocean swim. And so they said, okay, let's put your money where your mouth is. Why don't we combine them all, and we'll see who is actually the best. And the first event actually had 15 participants come and do it. Contrast that, or fast forward to last year, where there were over 2,400. As mentioned, you have to qualify to go. You have to actually have completed another Ironman within a certain country to represent your particular country. So 66 countries were involved last year. Pretty much those distances stuck around from way back in 1978 though. So 3.8k bike, 180k swim, let's change that around. 3.8k swim, 180k cycle, and then a marathon to finish at 42.2. Pretty epic, pretty amazing stuff. The real big challenge though for anyone who's competing over at the World Ironman Champs is this whole thing with the environmental conditions. So 30 plus in excess sometimes, 70% humidity. And I guess the real challenge is that those are the temperatures that are being recorded at the nearest station. But actually when they're actually out on the course, so they have the lava fields and the wind is fanning that heat and intensity off those lava fields. And even on the run, just running on the tarmac and getting the whole heat coming through, it actually makes it so much worse, as you will know. Anyway, so coming back to, I guess, heat acclimation. And I guess I put down one of the real big challenges for New Zealand athletes in general. So yes, heat is a big challenge, or acclimating to heat for Kona, for any athlete. But the real challenge that I actually see, and I was trying to find a real cool diagram to show it, and like a real scientific one. So I found this one. This is the challenge. During the Northern Hemisphere summer, it's our winter. Ultimately, that's the biggest challenge. We come from a climate that's definitely cooler during obviously the winter time, and then all the major championships that we tend to go and compete at are in that Northern Hemisphere, and we struggle, and it's difficult. And lots of the times we don't have either the resources or the ability to actually prepare ourselves well enough. So that, in my eyes, is actually the biggest challenge, that we're so far away from everything else and reversed in the season. The other part of the challenge that we had with this particular, I guess it's a case study more than anything. One person, she's qualified, she's within the age group of 40 to 45 for competing across there, and we have these recommendations in literature, and we get this idea of this is what we should do to acclimate correctly for the conditions. 10 days intensive, being into the environment, then compete and go from there, your body's adjusted. Now in reality, that's never the case that we can actually do that. So what do we actually have to be able to do for our athletes? What can we actually change in the environments that we have? So the arrangement that we have with Katrina was that she'd come in twice a week. So yes, we know that it's better to have continual exposure day after day after day, but that's never going to happen. It's never going to happen at the end of the day. So we had her in on a Wednesday and a Friday. So those are the 2 days she came in. We had 30 minutes exposure in the heat chamber, and we took a whole bunch of data that was going to help us out. The other challenge of the recommended versus the reality is that her actual training schedule. So yeah, you want to have someone who's able to come in, and I guess for research purposes, we want things to be really nice and kept similar the whole time. But she would rock up some days and go, okay, I'll say, how are you feeling? What have you been up to? Oh, yesterday I biked 160k. This morning I had a 4k swim, which were reps of 500 metre sprints. And I was like, okay, are you okay to come into the chamber? And then we'd get her in, and she would be exercising in heat for 30 minutes. We started off on the treadmill, had a couple of issues at the treadmill, came into the bike from there. We tried to keep things reasonably steady and constant, but also progressive for her as well, so that both the intensity of her riding, but also the intensity of the environment that she was experiencing. So we did that either via increasing the temperature or increasing the humidity within that chamber. So yeah, literature tells us one thing of this is the best, but in reality that never really works out. And what do our athletes actually need? So it was actually really interesting to undertake a case study with an athlete in the real world situation with these demands of training and availability. Okay. Sorry, Russ. Right, anyone? So we had a number of markers of interest that we wanted to look at. And some of them you would be really going, oh yeah, that would be normal. So we looked at heart rate. So we monitored her heart rate right from the start, got some baseline levels. We tracked that each time she was in there. Safety point of view as well. RPE, asking her how she was actually feeling within the chamber at any given time. So regular intervals, we were getting engaged on how is she coping with that stress or strain. Thermal sensation, how was she interpreting the environment that was around her? Was she comfortable? Was she feeling warm, slightly warm, or hot? Sweat rate, how much was she perspiring? So we weigh her at the start, weigh her at the end, and get an idea. Oh, and we also tracked her fluid intake during that time as well. So how much fluid was she getting? Tympanic temperature using the squirrel. Hence the picture of the squirrel. So the squirrel device, we took her tympanic temperature. One, again, health and safety, but also a really good marker of trying to figure out what's actually happening for her internally as well. And lastly, we actually took blood lactates on every Friday that she was in. So we didn't kind of expose her to being smashed every single time she came in. Every second session that she had with us, we'd take blood lactates just to track her progress. So our findings that we had were, heart rate came down at any given time period at a given intensity. So for example, she'd be in the chamber and baseline measures after 10 minutes, her heart rate could have been up at that 160, 170 beats per minute. After 2, 3, 4 weeks, we start to see that decline occurring. So the stress of the environment was becoming less on her body. She was being able to deal or cope with that a lot more effectively. Which are a real dramatic increase in heart rate from when she came and did some baseline stuff here in the lab and then taking her into the chamber. So we saw an increase of 20 beats per minute just by going into that environment. Obviously really beneficial to be able to lower that heart rate at a higher temperature. Decrease in her RPE, so her rate of perceived exertion, she was finding at a given time, at a given intensity, it was lower. And it wasn't like a massive drop to begin with. It held steady, and then she started to go, actually, this feels easier, feels more comfortable. Her thermal sensation, so how hot she was finding it, again, decreased. She would walk into the chamber the first time, feels hot, feels really warm, and then after a while she'd walk in there, start cycling and go, actually I feel real comfortable. I'm feeling really comfortable in this environment right now. So her own personal feeling of it had decreased. Her sweat rates increased, so she was sweating more profusely, which is a good thing. That's what we want to see happen. We want to see that the body is adapting to it to be able to cool it more effectively. So we saw that increase. There's a decrease in her temperature, again at any given point. We never saw a plateau in her temperature though. For the time that she was in the chamber, it would slowly increase. To begin with, we have quite a steep increase in say week 1, week 2, week 3. But after some time, we just got a more gradual increase in her temperature. Blood lactate, questionable, what was occurring. And that could be down to what her training had been the day before, the morning of. We saw incredible variables with that. Often she would stay under that lactate threshold, and then other times that she would just be flirting with it the whole time.
So what was the parameters on the chamber? Did you keep it at the 30 plus degrees, 70% humidity?
Good question. So what we did is we started off with 35 degrees and 60% humidity, and that's where she started at. Those temperatures were picked off the averages during that time, but they're actually the extremes of that time. So what would be the worst case scenario? And then from there, we actually only steadily increased the humidity for her. The very first session, it was down low, like 30, then we hit it at 32 to begin with. But then we increased the humidity, so that's the thing that actually really kills people out there at the end of the day. It's not the heat, it's the humidity.
So how did you incrementally increase?
Yeah, so we just did jumps of 5%. So it went from 60 to 65 to 70. We left it at 70. We did go for periods of time where we held it pretty constant so we could see if there was a change, and we saw that shift. Every time we bumped it up, there was a little bit of a reaction with these other variables, but not majorly. And then the body would just adjust to it and get used to it.
And with the training load, was it a set training session each time, or was it
in the chamber?
As well?
Yeah, so good question. Yeah. Athlete-centered. So we took I took a real athlete-centered approach to this, in the sense that I had to do what was best for her. So at the end of the day, she was the athlete. She was the one that was the centre of all of this. I didn't want to be there to dictate how it was going to be. Her training sessions, primarily in here, were 30 minutes, and we then asked her, I was like, right, what do you want to do? Do you want to go longer? Do you want to increase any intensity? The intensity she was happy with. And off the top of my head, I actually can't remember what was said there. Yeah. So it had a set wattage on the bike. She was in on her own bike as well. I should have mentioned that at the start. But then we would ask her, would you like to go longer? So then she increased it to 40 minutes, 45, and then in her last session, 60 minutes. The thing that we found though was that as soon as we start to push that out longer, definitely we still keep getting this increase of temperature, and so we had to be mindful of that fact. She actually pulled the pin on one of the sessions. Turned out that she actually was feeling pretty under the weather, took blood pressure and all the rest of it, and yet, sure enough, she actually had quite a low blood pressure, saw a doctor, and was just under the weather for about a week, and then bounced back and was fine.
So what the intensity, was it low, was it high?
Yeah, so it's probably above what she was going to be doing, so above race pace for her. She was competing or doing 30 to 60 minutes above her normal race pace. So it's definitely a higher intensity. And the rationale behind it was that you get the best acclimation with the higher or the more use of muscles and the higher intensity. So you couldn't just go sit in a sauna, which is some of the recommendation out there, like do sauna sessions, go and sit in the sauna and just sweat it out. Yes, that would be somewhat beneficial, but not as much as if you're actually using the working muscles. So we set that higher. We had limited time, didn't want to be sitting in there for hours on end, wasting latex power. I tried to centre it towards how she was feeling and what was working with her. Yeah, at the end of the day, we wanted to make sure that she was the prime person who's getting the benefit out of it. The other thing with athletes centred, towards the last 3 weeks, Russ actually came in and we started to have a conversation around menthol and the use of menthol within the heat. And she was open to giving it a go. We exposed that to her in the chamber. She seemed pretty positive around the response, and she actually took that to Kona and had it with her on the bike. Really interesting, heading through customs, and oh, there you go, they're sitting on the back here, a lovely blue on the back. Really interesting, I wrote a letter just in case she got pulled up with having this strange blue liquid in a couple of bottles, but it seemed to go okay. And which comes to my next point, hopefully. So the whole idea around that whole quantitative approach versus qualitative. And yeah, we got some good numbers around heart rate going down, but at the end of the day, it actually came down to Katrina and what she felt like as an athlete competing. And so a couple of things that she mentioned to us during her sessions here was, actually, my training's going really well outside of here now. So the adaptation from doing some work at higher intensity in the heat, then we're going out into our colder conditions to her normal training. She was saying she was feeling stronger, feeling fresher. And that's been reported within literature as well, of being a benefit or a byproduct. So I guess you could say that by exposing her over sort of, 8-9 weeks within the chamber, even though it was only every second day, she got the benefits for all of her other trainings outside of that as well.
But did she do that sort of training anyway, or did she just do normal slides?
No, she's got some higher intensity things as well. And look, maybe it was that, hey look, just one extra bout could have helped, could have been beneficial. But like I say, within some of the literature, it talks around, actually there's a benefit if you go train in the heat, and then you are just doing your normal training outside, there is increase in performance, increasing that. And she felt better for it. The other part on reflection of coming back to New Zealand, we sat down with her and had that conversation of, hey, just how did it go? What was it like? What did you experience? And she said that she felt really good. She felt that it made a big difference for her. Even down to the fact of in the hotel room, with her family all staying in the hotel room, she decided no air conditioning. I want to have some time to acclimate there as well. And her husband and children were just, dying within the hotel room and hating it. But she was actually comfortable. Like right from day one, she said she was comfortable. Got out on the bike, comfortable. For her, the actual conditions during race day were actually quite nice for her. So it sat around 32 degrees and around 60% humidity. So he had overestimated that, and she got the benefit of feeling, actually this is not as bad as what it was in the chamber. Her report on to us was, hey, I felt like that worked. And at the end of the day, that's what we wanted. We wanted her to feel like it made a benefit to her. We asked her to talk to some of the other New Zealand athletes around what do they do to prepare. And to be honest, lots of them don't have any real opportunity to be exposed to something like that. They would try to wear some extra layers, but nothing really major. None of the menthol use, none of the repeated exposure. And she had a competitor here in New Zealand at the World Ironman Champs, New Zealand Ironman Champs, where 1 year she beat her just, the other year the other lady beat her. Over at Kona, she smashed her. She beat her by about 40 minutes.
Wow.
And we put it down, and we can put it down to a number of things, and each individual, but we're putting it down to her exposure within the chamber and her feeling or comfort within that environment.
How many days did she go out before?
So she actually had a good period of time. So she had 8 days prior to the competition. So she still had a good acclimation period. regardless of what we did. The difference being that she could step into the environment from day one and feel like she was comfortable, rather than finding it really hard for the first 3-4 days to then get accustomed to it.
Would there be any benefit of doing longer sessions? Because obviously the Ironman bike is a lot longer than 30 minutes to an hour. Or is that mitigated by, is it you get the bang buck out of the 30 minutes and then results after that are just pointless?
Great question. Let's do some research on it. Yeah, I to be honest, I'm not 100% sure.
What's the standard protocol that most people utilise?
Might be able to sit down.
Yeah. I think part of it comes down to, again, the what you can realistically do. Like, you are on a bike for endless hours during an Ironman. And yes, it probably would be really great to do that here, but
maybe that detracts more from your training quality across the rest of your program by imposing too much of a hard load on that heat session, which you then struggle to recover for the next session.
And to be honest, like for the first 3-4 weeks, she was maxing out at her top heart rate.
Yeah.
Then we started to see that she wasn't getting there anymore. So
You
trying
said it
to
was above the threshold though, right?
yeah. I think it's probably going to be beneficial, but it may not be. Maybe they're shorter and more intensive. Yeah, let's do some research. Sounds good. And like I say, ultimately she did really well. She actually only was about 12 minutes slower than her New Zealand Ironman time, even with all the environmental conditions that were going on. Like I say, this competitor that she was neck and neck with, she absolutely smashed and destroyed. She said that others found it really difficult in the heat. She felt quite comfortable, which is great. I'm just going to keep moving. I've got 4 minutes to go through my next one. Okay, so very contrastingly, I've done some work with Ultimate Frisbee. And my first point is, yes, it's a real sport. It's a real sport. And in fact, so established back in 1968 over in America. And in America there are 5.1 million players. 5.1 million players. That was in 2012. But here in New Zealand locally, there is a club within Hamilton, and then all these other areas, there are organisations or outfits that operate, whether it be through a club or a pickup game or some kind of competition. We do have a women's league, a men's league, and a mixed league. They play outdoor, indoor, and beach. There are world championships. 7-a-side is the outdoor game. The field dimensions, 37 metres wide, so not quite as wide as our rugby field, and 110 metres, which includes like an end zone that you score in. There are no referees, it's self-ref, self-managed, and it's a high-intensity invasion sport. Subbing after each point is allowed, you can't sub during each one. There is little research currently being published around Ultimate Frisbee in general. So what I wanted to do, I wanted to help quantify gameplay, and specifically I looked at lots of different things, and thanks to Pete to try and narrow my focus down quite a bit. And this is still a work in progress. I'm still finding exactly where the direction is. The process that we went through, we got some baseline and familiarisation with GPS for the athletes. They were competing at the New Zealand Mixed National Championships, which were held here in Hamilton in November. And I had 4 males and 4 female participants. So I had 8 GPS units to use, and we split them male and female. The tournament was comprised of 3 to 4 games a day, each day for 3 days. And my areas of interest were varying. You know, what was the difference between males and females? What was the difference between positions? What was the difference between first game of the day and last game of the day? What was the difference between games played in your first games versus your in day 1 versus day 2 versus day 3? What was the comparison between if you won a game easily versus a game that was a lot harder? So there were lots of things that I was interested in. I've got a whole bunch of data, and I'm still deciding exactly where we go. Findings so far, though. And a game that lasts approximately 100 and an hour 10, hour 20, actually on field time, athletes are actually only out there for about 20 to 25 minutes. And that doesn't mean that they're actually active from those times though, because there's stoppages even within points. They covered a total distance of around 4 to 5 kilometres in a game. But interesting enough, actually during the times that they were on the field, they only covered 1.5 to 2.5 kilometres of actual on-field time. So that's a big, that's a point of interest to me of going, man, that's a lot of distance covered when you're not actually playing. Half the distance that you cover in a game is actually off the field. No apparent differences between gender and position as of current, and max heart rate was met many times during a game. So this would be a comparison between two games for two players. So we've got two players side by side and just the similarities or differences. And so depending on the game and the variability within the game, sometimes a player, this player here covered more distance than their second game, so just over 5 kilometres to just over 4.5 kilometres. The colouring coding is the level of intensity that they were at. So were they moving at 0 to 5 kilometres an hour? I can't remember the intervals at this point in time, but there were increments of speed associated. So the red is your highest intensity, and only a fraction of that time are they in that really high intensity. These are all established off their own speed as well, so what their max was. The biggest thing I guess I found with all of this is that there is a whole bunch of variability depending on a game. You might be on the field and play a point that lasts 20 seconds and then you're off again. Or you might be on the field on a point that lasts, I think the longest one that we had was 7 minutes of repeated high intensity sprints. And so the variability of the sport comes into play quite a lot. Practical applications that I hope to be able to draw on from this. So training recommendations for ultimate Frisbee. So actually what should they be doing in a sense in their trainings to help condition them appropriately? Specifically, how do they link up to their tournament for a tournament? So what do I need to do to prepare for this tournament? Because most of the time they train twice a week as a group and then do their individual thing from there. Some of their training actually needs to be that they need to train first thing in the morning, then at lunchtime, then after work to start to marry up between the two. And then I wanted to look at any cross-code transfer, and mainly I can see this working actually within the secondary school space where they go away to tournaments and they play multiple games in a day. Touch might be an example of an area where they might be able to take something. Questions, thoughts, comments? You've got 1 is 2 minutes. Any quick things? And then apologies, I do have to run off. I've got a class I'm meeting in a town, which I forgot about.
Good luck. Yeah. The also Frisbee thing, I've got a couple of weeks starting to play football time.
Nice.
I've been to watch a couple of games and yeah, I do know sport.
Yeah.
But it's interesting and there are a lot of questions.
You look like you learn a lot in the process. Like the way you were talking was fantastic in regards to I could tell that you were in it. Do you feel like you really advanced in that space? The point of vocational elective is to grow in the specialty space.
Yeah, most definitely. I mean, I think of the undergrad space, and we went into the heat chamber once or twice during my 3 years, and it was a case of we did one thing on each other, and that was it. So the repeated 8, 9, 10 weeks in there of working with someone and getting used to the whole setup, monitoring those systems and evaluating, real world practical application, and if we think about that, developing practitioners as our driver, then I feel way more confident in that space, and just working with somebody who is actually doing something real. The ultimate Frisbee stuff here, that just dealing with GPS and dealing with managing athletes in a tournament. Oh, hey look, I need to see you for about 30 seconds before you go onto the field, and managing that as well. So really, really important to judge them as part of the process as well.
Great stuff.
Just before you go, would you think that the difference in between using a heat and acclimation, or do you think there might be more of the humidity?
Humidity is the zapping one, and depending on the environment you're going to go into, I think you choose where you set that.
Could you choose that? And the heat acclimation?
Yeah, most definitely. So we can completely remove that environment if we so wish. But if you are going into that area, then obviously the matching or pairing of is really important.
You don't need a heat chamber though, do you? Because we found out from Chris's talk last year, if you get a greenhouse or a shed from Bunnings and just stick a kettle in there, it does the job.
Well, so I thought you said literally you fill a bath full of really hot water, you shut the door and you frame that.
Yeah.
It works just as
Yeah, so if I do like heaters, like you said, the heaters and it's been hard to control it, you can't be exact, but
There's some cool stuff coming out around just training in extra layers of clothing at the moment, and that's I think that may work, but it's quite hard to be disciplined with that because the temptation is always just to alleviate that. And also looking at post exercise like hot water immersion and how you can mimic some of those heat adaptations through just having a hot bath for half an hour after a session. It's pretty cool.
what was the mental protocol?
So menthol, we just used mouth swilling and used that alongside the carbohydrate supplementation. We've not looked at that concomitantly yet, so at the moment, once the PhD is ticked off, that'll be the next step, sticking some carbohydrate in there. And also looking at the form of menthol as well. So whether you need it alongside ice, whether you need it, you can just have chewing gum or anything like that.
So she was like repeatedly throughout the flight.
Yeah.
Yeah, so she consumed approximately 20 to 30 mils in a swill every 15 minutes. Every 15 minutes. And she said that it actually enabled her to focus and control herself during the bike of this is my next increment, this is my next increment. She said for a race strategy point of view, it worked really well for her. Yeah. Apologies, sorry about that.
Yeah, no.
Bye.
Yeah. Yeah.
I think it's interesting, like, 2Ks is standing around.
Yeah.
Lost data of 2Ks. What are they doing if they're not on the field?
Yeah.
2Ks. Walking around the Or chasing after the Frisbees that have gone off
It'd be interesting to look at that with other sports too, though, like at rugby and netball and things like that, because there is a lot of, you do walk up and down the sideline a lot, so it'd be quite interesting to do a comparative with other codes.
I think definitely from this day, it seems like there's a real cost to that as well. Like, half your game distance is huge.
That's a lot.
I think we've got next session 2 weeks' time. We've got Brad Mail coming across to talk about his master's research.
Similar type of thing,
Hey!
right?